Coming up on Network Africa, leader of two military coups in less than a year in Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta is sworn in as transitional president. Nearly 40 people killed in ethnic violence in South Darfur in Sudan. Plus, life returns to a Rwandan district ravaged by volcanic activity in the Democratic Republic of Congo 2 weeks ago. Hello and welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin the program this week with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend. On Sunday, the death toll from the attack on Burkina Faso rose to at least 160 people, including around 20 children. Gunmen burst into the rural town of Solan in the northeast of the country last Friday night, leading to the casualties. After the attack, the deadliest in the country in 6 years, the country declared a 72-hour national mourning period. The United Nations chief Antonio Guterres condemned the heinous attack, saying he was outraged by the killings and is offering the country the UN's full support, even as he calls on countries to step up the fight against violent extremism. On Saturday, Nigerian telecommunications firms blocked access to Twitter following a regulatory directive aimed at suspending the U.S. social media giant indefinitely, a move that has been criticized by rights campaigners and diplomats as a gag on free speech. Nigeria's government said on Friday it had suspended Twitter's activities indefinitely 2 days after the platform removed a tweet by President Muhammadu Buhari that threatened to punish regional secessionists in the West African country. Following the suspension, many Nigerians have been reacting to it.
Well, I felt really disappointed and quite sad because due to so many ongoing policies that doesn't really favor, this is another bad one, another bad decision. So I felt really sad and disappointed about the action the government took regarding Twitter.
And finally, thousands of supporters of Mali's M5 RFP opposition coalition gathered for a rally in Bamako's Independence Square to mark 1 year since the start of protests that contributed to the ouster of former President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Last week's military overthrow of the transitional government that replaced Keïta, Mali's second coup in 9 months, has drawn international condemnation and raised fears the political crisis will weaken regional efforts to fight Islamist militants. Colonel Assimi Goïta, who led the August coup and last week's revolt, was declared president last Friday, having served as vice president under the previous transitional government. But to our main stories for today, Colonel Assimi Goïta has now been sworn in as Mali's transitional president. It's the fourth night since he declared himself president after removing the transitional president and prime minister in a coup, the coup that was the second he engineered in 9 months. During the ceremony, Colonel Goïta pledged to honor regional and international commitments and to also hold credible, fair and transparent elections. Now, these elections are expected to happen in February 2022. Last week, leaders of the West African bloc, ECOWAS, joined the African Union in suspending Mali's membership, calling on the military government to adhere to an 18-month transition towards presidential elections. France and other Western powers also want to return to civilian rule, while Mali is key to the stability of the Sahel region that has been struggling with jihadist insurgency for years. Zambia's police chief, Kakoma Kanjanga, has denied reports that the country's security forces fired on a convoy carrying opposition presidential candidate Hakainde Hichilema amid a tense atmosphere ahead of the 12th of August general election. Local media reports that police fired at Mr. Hichilema's convoy in the northern city of Chingola on its way to a local church. However, Zambia's police boss has denied these reports, saying at no point did the police fire live ammunition at the opposition leader's supporters. The government has banned public gatherings and political rallies, with President Edgar Lungu saying that the restrictions are necessary to combat coronavirus. But the opposition believes the ban is a ploy by the incumbent to maintain his grip on power. Mr. Hichilema is a wealthy businessman, and he is the main opposition candidate in the August election. The two opposition parties in the self-declared Republic of Somaliland have won the majority of seats in last week's parliamentary elections. The region's electoral commission says the Somaliland National Party won 31 seats, while the Justice and Welfare Party collected 21 seats. Now, the ruling Kumiye Party managing to secure 30 of the 82 seats in the polls. Now, the new parliament will have no women, as none of the female politicians who ran in the elections won their races. The breakaway republic, which lies on the coast of the Gulf of Aden, has not been recognized internationally since it declared unilateral independence from the rest of Somalia in 1991. It has held a number of elections successfully. Since arriving as the UN's top envoy in South Sudan, Nicholas Haysom is reiterating the peacekeeping mission's support for peace building, constitution-making and elections in the world's newest nation. In a press conference, the SRSG briefed media on his recent tour of all 10 states which he had prioritized on arrival to better understand the needs of communities and how the United Nations mission can support them. He said the concerns were consistent in all locations as they need help to prevent subnational conflict, improve infrastructure, and build peace at the grassroots level.
Without peace, meaningful infrastructural development cannot take place. Without peace, displaced families cannot return home. Without real and lasting peace, progress in almost every aspect of South Sudan's social, economic, and political life is impossible. Real peace will give South Sudan citizens the ability to determine their future. We are firmly committed to supporting the peace process, but I must emphasize, it is not something that we can do alone. Our work must be in support of South Sudanese stakeholders and in partnership with the international community. The peace process must be led and owned by the people of South Sudan to ensure that the peace that is achieved is sustainable. We are rebalancing our military peacekeepers to take a more nimble, robust and proactive approach to the protection of civilians. We are deploying troops to conflict hotspots, setting up temporary bases and intensifying patrols to deter conflict. We're doing everything we can to protect humanitarian workers and supplies and to secure access to those services, including rebuilding 3,500 kilometers of roads.
State media in Sudan say nearly 40 people have been killed and dozens others wounded in ethnic violence in Darfur in the state of South Darfur. Now, it's not clear what sparked the fighting between the Taisha and Felata groups, but they often clash over access to land and water. Violence has increased in Darfur since the United Nations African Union force ended its mission last year. At least 1.5 million people remain displaced by the conflict, which began 18 years ago. 2 Libyan security officers have been killed and 5 others injured in a blast at a security checkpoint. The blast occurred in the southern city of Sabha after a suicide bomber detonated a car bomb. Interim Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Deiba has offered condolences to the families of those 2 people killed while condemning the attack as a cowardly terrorist act. He says the war against terrorism continues and they will strike hard in all their hideouts. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Well, amid the controversy over reintroduced consular fees and other issues which sparked a protest recently, the Nigerian Consul General in South Africa, Malik Abdul Ahmed, has hosted some leaders of various Nigerian community groups to give more clarity on latest developments. The interactive event gave some citizens an opportunity to ask questions they required answers to. Top on the list of concerns was the lingering difficulty in the procurement of passport owing to a scarcity of passport booklets.
The press conference and community engagement follows a protest held outside the Consulate General, which voiced a string of allegations against the Consul General over some fees reinstated or introduced for consular services. The Consul General reached out to the Nigerian community to set the record straight, he says.
Have been blackmailed as wicked and have been described as an extortionist by some elements within the community. It must be emphasized that the administrative fees and the lost passports were paid to the government distributor account and not to any individual accounts. It beggars believe that anyone in their right senses could describe the entire operation as an extortion.
The issues range from the 120 Rand administration fee for consular services, scarcity of passport booklets and a backlog of passports, introduction of 2,000 Rand fee for lost passports, reissue, and there's also the issue of agents for passport processing.
The reintroduction of these fees was sequel to an approval for same from headquarters in Abuja, following presidential approval. On this issue, the Mission could not unilaterally impose any charges without headquarters approval or consent. The admin fee of 120 rands pertains to all services rendered by the two missions.
The protesting group, the Nigerian Union South Africa, was not present at this event, but many of those present sought clarity on a number of issues.
Apologies, Your Excellency, but we need to respect ourselves here. On the issue of passports, a lot of people have not gotten their passport. They are not well informed about what is going on, and the anger is boiling out there.
Anger is boiling over. We are aware of that. We'll continue to pacify our people here. The solution is not to take the laws into your hands or to protest. The government has explained the situation sufficiently. And I think it's left for us to bear with them.
Given the challenges that we face in South Africa, and I believe the passports is not the huge challenge, we have a very serious immigration problem. Many of our people do not have papers. What measures are you going to take as Consul General to assist members of our community who are very vulnerable with regards to their permits? I thank you.
That is a tough one, really. Like I always say, it is always good to know what obtains in this country before you set foot here.
We have a challenge. The babies that are born here in South Africa to parents that don't have permits, they're actually having a huge challenge. We have a lot of children that don't even have Nigerian passport, and they are not able to even travel with their parents because they are told they are aliens.
There are only issues we are collating to deal with home affairs. We also have a consular and immigration platform for engagement with the host authorities. We are going to harmonize all these issues and then put them up for discussion with a view to finding a definitive solution.
Much more was said, many more questions were answered, while others were not, as the Consul General had to leave for another meeting. The general hope is for more consultation before policies are formed and for much better communication between the missions and the people at all times when these policies are reached. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
A sense of normalcy is returning to a Rwandan district ravaged by volcanic activity in the Democratic Republic of Congo 2 weeks ago. The volcanic eruption in Mount Iriagongo killed 32 people and destroyed hundreds of homes in DRC's Goma area. It was followed by a series of earth tremors in the neighboring regions, including Rubavu in Rwanda. Many residents fled their homes and their properties, as well as their infrastructures had been destroyed. Well, in Rubavu, businesses have now started reopening, with schools and hospitals, which had been shut in the wake of the volcanic activities, have restarted operations. However, some of the residents have been complaining about the lack of government assistance to rebuild their livelihoods. Still to come on the program. African fashion icon Patheo celebrates 50 years of dressing up African presidents and promoting African fashion around the continent. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has shut down schools and suspended public gatherings for a period of 42 days as the country faces a surge of infections in a second COVID-19 wave. Public transport between districts will be banned from Thursday to allow students who are in schools to return home. Bars, cinemas, and theaters have also been closed. Dozens of schools had reported virus cases, especially amongst staff and students, prompting the closure. The announcement came hours after the Health Ministry announced 1,259 new coronavirus cases, the highest number of infections recorded in a single day, and 9 deaths on Sunday. Every child has the right to education as enshrined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but nearly 260 million children, about 1 in 10, were out of school even before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. In Nigeria, more children are out of school, and the United Nations puts the figure at 13 million. Our correspondent Dare Idowu visited some slums in Lagos State. He reports that there are obvious gaps.
Lagos, the ever-busy city of more than 20 million residents, where 21% of the state is on wetlands. With housing and other critical infrastructure overstretched, the fate of the children who live at the bottom of the pyramid hangs in the balance. Tucked within the upscale Lekki Peninsula, Ikota slum is one of the many informal communities in Lagos metropolis.
It's not a big school actually, it's just small.
17-year-old Rebecca has lived here all her life, not defined by her environment. She's following up on her dreams to lead a better life.
I'm a science student, though, but I also have great passion for arts. Like I paint, I draw, I write poems. So basically, I aspire to study biochemistry in school. At the same time, do enough of my arts too, like paintings.
Rebecca takes us through the neighborhood, not a walk in the park, but a necessary step that captures everyday life of many of the residents here. In a country where urban population is growing at a rate where the economy is playing catch-up, informal settlements are springing up everywhere with bad living conditions. And that's the story of this major school in this neighborhood, where the students will have to make their way through this makeshift bridge to make it to their school every day. This school is a product of self-help and individual efforts in keeping many of the children in school.
Most of the children here are sponsored from people outside here. Presently, I can say that this school has produced more than 100 graduates from university. Some of our teachers that we train from these environments finish their university and still come back here and employ them.
This neighborhood, like many of its kind, can boast of many private schools targeting low-income earners, and just like their location, not much is promised. The government schools are expected to provide an option, and the Lagos State government says it's doing just that.
We have a zero tolerance for out-of-school children, an effort to bring back the pupils that are at the verge of discontinuing their education. Because we noticed that during COVID, that some children, because long layoff from schools, were not planning to come back. So it was a deliberate program and project that we set out to go look for each of those pupils and bring them back to schools to continue, in their educational pursuit.
Betty Abba, a child rights activist, faults the state government's approach in addressing issues concerning children living in the slum.
Most of the children, most of the time, do have some kind of access to education, especially the public schools. But the problem is sustainability, because many of these communities also, from time to time, fall under the hammer of what I would describe as the brutal eviction policies of Lagos State government. And many times, the educational dreams of these children are interrupted.
As Rebecca and children in other settlements continue to make efforts to keep their heads above the water, they are hoping that the socio-economic reality they face will be a thing of the past someday. Dari Ito, Channels Television News.
African fashion icon Pateo is celebrating 50 years in his career that has seen him dress up African presidents and promoting African fashion around the continent. Former South African President Nelson Mandela gave Pate Ouedraogo his first break. Since then, the Ivorian Burkina fashion designer Pateo has made a career in the industry that he believes will create wealth and also promote the continent's rich culture in fashion.
Along the catwalk at a crowded high fashion show in the Ivorian capital, Abidjan, it's hard to imagine that the man who designed the glamorous outfits once dreamed of having little more than a bicycle and a radio. When 20-year-old Pate Ouedraogo left his village in Burkina Faso in the late 1960s, his slender frame ruled him out of working in Ivory Coast's cocoa sector. But a chance decision to become an apprentice tailor has seen him rise to the height of the global fashion industry, dressing presidents and global icons like Nelson Mandela. 50 years later, Pateo, as is now called, is celebrating a career that has seen his uniquely colorful shirts and dresses become must-haves for Africa's most famous leaders and celebrities. It says his first big break came in 1994 when South African singer Miriam Makeba bought 4 of his shirts as a gift for former President Nelson Mandela.
President Mandela wore Pateo in Paris, and a journalist asked him a question about the shirt because it was the first time a president wore a multicolored shirt like that.
Mandela's appearance in Pateo's shirt and the mention of his name led to newspaper headlines and widespread intrigue, sparking a rush of orders and sales that entered his shop and propelled him to the forefront of Africa's fashion scene almost overnight. He even met Mandela in 1998, an encounter which further boosted his career.
It was a meeting that changed my life because I never imagined at the village we would hear about Mandela and apartheid and all the rest. I never thought I'd be a teller, even less dress him.
Mandela was but the first African icon to adorn Pateo's work. Soon afterwards, he would go on to meet and design clothes for Rwandan President Paul Kagame, former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara, Nigerian billionaire Aliko Dangote, and many more. Pateo believes the key to showing Africans the value of their style is to open their eyes to the myriad development opportunities that fashion has to offer, whether they be jobs, infrastructure, or simply a stronger and more united continental identity.
And that's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.